after a while, we decided we're going to send a letter to the Congress. We sent a letter back in February to the House and Senate Ag committees saying, here are 9 things we'd like you to address. Have some field hearings, do this, do that. Talk to farmers. And we really didn't get much of a response. So we sent a letter last month saying, please pay attention to what's going on. You need to talk to farmers. We are not hearing that you're talking to farmers. And farmers have a reluctance to do that. So what we've done is we've put together a website for farmers to speak up. But we're not trying to replace trade associations. All of us have been involved in trade associations. We're not trying to undermine their work, but we're trying to make sure that we provide opportunities for the grassroots out in the countryside that are raising the food that we eat, an opportunity to speak up. So we are going to turn to some of the other folks on this call and have a conversation. There is a Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. Do not ask me to explain exactly how to use that, but I'd like to go forward with first Pam Johnson, a farmer from Floyd County, Iowa, former NCGA president, and still very active in speaking up for and about agriculture. So Pam, take it away.
Thank you, John. So I farm with my family in northern Iowa, and the conversations around my kitchen table or out in the farmyard this morning, this week, this month have been about prices of diesel at the pump, prices of fertilizer, but not just prices, also concerns about availability and the uncertainty. And before, my sons and I probably didn't even know how to spell the Strait of Hormuz. And now the Strait of Hormuz is a real concern, a lot of uncertainty. We hear that the war is over, but I think when farmers like me and like my sons and our families talk about the prices and availability of diesel fuel, of products to make fertilizer, and we're concerned about inputs, but then we also have to think, so what is the cause of that? So the war has made so much uncertainty for us as farmers when we are concerned about input availability and prices. We think about, why is this? It's the war. So my voice to Congress is like, let's be accountable. Let's look at the consequences of the war. Let's figure out a way to make sure that farmers' voices are heard, but also that there are short-term and long-term plans for how we're going to get through this. It's projected that farmers aren't going to make any money for the next 2 years. This is a serious crisis out here. And like John said, we want people to listen. We want to make sure that our senators and congressmen are listening to farmers and are looking at what the short term of giving ad hoc payments to farmers is just us getting by. We need long-term visionaries in Congress to help us figure out what are the long-term opportunities for farmers out here like me. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
You're on.
Thank you, Pam. Many of you may remember in a previous life, I ran the Renewable Fuels Association, and my passion for biofuels and ethanol specifically has not faded over time, although my beard has. I was one of those that early on with John Doggett was expressing a bit of frustration, but not just with the chaotic trade policies of the administration or the indiscriminate funding cuts at USDA and EPA that have impacted biofuels and farmers across the country, but with Congress's inability to respond, to do anything. In my view, Congress has abdicated its responsibilities on trade policy. It's abdicated its policy or its responsibilities in terms of spending. It's abdicated its responsibility on war powers that is now having a demonstrative impact on farmers with, as Pam said, the challenges with the closing of the Strait of Hormuz and the resulting increases in farm input costs. And, probably the poster child for Congress's inability to get anything meaningful done has been on ethanol, on E15, when they failed this year to move an E15 package that EPA says is necessary. It really demonstrated just how inept Congress has become. And they need to get back to it. Look, at a time when crude oil prices are $94 a barrel Brent today, when gasoline prices are still over $4, and ethanol is just $1.95 a gallon, and they can't figure out a way to provide consumers some relief by allowing E15 to be sold year-round across the country. That's just inexcusable, and it makes no sense. If you were to get E15 done, analysis by RFA suggests that it would save consumers 25 cents a gallon, and that would have a meaningful impact, and it needs to get done. But Congress's failures is not limited, unfortunately, to just E15. They've also failed to get a meaningful farm bill done. So research dollars aren't flowing. The U.S. was once the preeminent leader in ag research. The U.S. has been surpassed by Brazil and China. They've canceled research. They've let go of important staff. And so what USDA has been able to do is far less. And Congress needs to get their act together, get a meaningful farm bill done, put some guardrails on trade policy. They need to show some courage, show some initiative, do their jobs. I'm going to turn it over to Dawn now, and she can talk a little bit more detail about the administration and what's going on.
Hi, everyone. Dawn Riley here, coming from Louisville, Kentucky. I am a former ag staffer to Senator Mitch McConnell and was a political appointee under the George W. Bush first administration. I came in as the acting undersecretary for food and nutrition, as well as research, education, and economics, and rounded out 4 years as chief of staff to Deputy Secretary Jim Mosley. My first farm bill was the 1990 Farm Bill as a very young pup on the Hill. And back in those days, I do remember that we had the opportunity to work in subcommittees, and we worked across the aisle with our colleagues at that level, brought in experts from the agencies or from interest groups to hear what the needs were as we were building out the Farm Bill section by section. Those then led to hearings in subcommittees that then funneled up to the entire committee when those things happened. But there was a great deal of working across the aisle, respecting the alliance that had come between farm groups and feeding groups for years and years and years that have kept things going forward. I think, unfortunately, today we're all very well aware of how that alliance has broken down and the increased partisanship in ag policy, which until recently had not been the case. It was really all of us working together for farmers and feeding people and our rural communities. Along with those types of things that happened throughout the years until we've seen the breakdown in Farm Bill policy and that really base understanding of systemic issues that we are all facing. has come the fact that our representatives are no longer willing to go out and hear people, which makes what we're doing very, very important for people to be able to tell their stories. I believe Axios reported a week or maybe 2 weeks ago about how only 11 town halls were scheduled for the entire August recess. And I think most of you on this call probably planned your entire August recess around town hall meetings and all of the things that were going on, from state fairs, county fairs, all across the country. One last thing that I will mention is how the reorganization at USDA is affecting this. The loss of expert people in all of the different mission areas and agencies tends to leave very few conversations available and people available to speak up and talk about what the needs are of the constituents that USDA serves. With that, I'll hand it back over to John to talk about further why we're doing this, and just hoping more people will have the courage to get involved, be it through our website, be it contacting their congressional members or the administration themselves.
Thanks, Don. And again, let me emphasize, we're not looking to replace trade associations. What we want to do is just create a spark that gets more and more people involved in talking to policymakers. And we're telling policymakers, you need to listen to that farm family at the fork of the creek. What's going on with them? And that is so important. You have to listen to the individual voices, and they are out there. They're looking for a meaningful and comfortable way that they can speak up. So that's why the RestoreAmericanAg.org website is out there. We're getting people putting their personal stories on that. But by no means are we trying to make that the only way that farmers and ranchers can speak up. We want them to dial those phone numbers and talk to their representatives. We happen to be in a year divisible by the number 2, which means that in a few short months, people will be going to the polls, and more policymakers might be making at least some attempt to being out in local communities. Speak up, talk to them about this. When they're asking for a vote, you need to ask them to listen to your voice. So with that, we will take any questions. Now, I'm not seeing any questions yet. I'll hold it. Okay, this is from Jake. Do you feel commodity organizations are reluctant to speak out because they fear retaliation from the administration, whether it's on trade policy, USDA reorganization, farm bill conservation cuts? As a former commodity and association leaders, how do you move past that hurdle? Well, I'll answer the question. Do you feel commodity organizations are reluctant to speak out because they fear retaliation? Yes. And you know what? I don't know, Jake, how long you've been in journalism, but the thought that someone in agricultural journalism would ask that question, had you posed that question to me 15 years ago, I would have thought, you were wearing a tin hat. Yes, people are afraid to speak up. Anybody else want to take a poke at that?
Well, it's not just trade associations. Everybody seems to be afraid to speak up these days, including members of Congress. And it is the lack of meaningful political discourse. That's one of the reasons why we feel it's so important for citizens to speak up, for farmers to speak up. It's not a criticism of anybody. It's an invitation for others to be part of the process.
And I would have to say, that I say to myself, and I've heard other farmers say it too, is this America? Where you have to fear for using your voice to have honest discourse and to be able to agree to disagree, to sit around and negotiate around a table for the best outcome. And that's what I hear people saying, and what they want from our leaders in the Senate and Congress is to quit attacking each other and sit down around the table and solve problems. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired out here in farm country.
The one thing I'll add is going directly more to congressional oversight and their questioning of things that happened in the administration. I have a very clear memory of several occasions receiving letters from congressional folks wondering what policy was in place and why it was doing this, and this was affecting my constituents a certain way. We need to get back to that oversight and questioning and open conversation about the policies that we're putting in place and how that affects not only individual constituencies, but also the American public as a whole.
Okay, Grace Yarrow with Politico. You've talked about needing a meaningful farm bill done. Do you think the bill the Senate is considering would do enough for farmers? How are asking lawmakers to move forward with a farm bill that will tangibly help farm country given partisan divides in the state of the Farm Bill coalition? No, I don't think that the legislation currently being under consideration is the meaningful response. The response seems to be from Washington is, oh, don't worry, we're going to send you a bunch of money. And that has been the refrain that we've heard. And the fact that the Farm Bill was kind of broken up with the big, beautiful bill that was done under the reconciliation process, which means that they went around some of the rules of the Senate and got something done that otherwise would not have been able to be done in a very partisan fashion. Now we're set up with what the big, beautiful bill did, particularly to the SNAP program. And we're seeing, and the Democrats said early on, if you cut SNAP funds, we are going to have a great reluctance to vote for a farm bill. They've been saying it over and over again, and I think we're seeing that now. So we have a bill that doesn't seem to have bipartisan support and doesn't seem to have had a lot of input from farmers and ranchers across the country. Maybe Don, you've got some experience with some of this as well.
I was just going to say that the recognition of consequences for bills that have been placed, especially reconciliation, and how that trickles down to the state level and the local level. We seem to be dealing with folks who are very short-sighted and thinking that their potential solutions may solve it all without looking at the bigger picture and long-term effects of what has happened and how those need to be addressed more completely.
So thank you, Dawn. And, from what you said before, back when I had my term as NCAGA president, and we looked at what the other 98% of Americans, what kept them up at night. And it was why we built coalitions with other groups and with the Feed America groups and with the SNAP program to bring together a big coalition that in the end was a better result and was bipartisan and got things done for all Americans and enabled farmers and ranchers to really be able to participate in policy, bringing together those coalitions, going to the Hill and talking about this is important for agriculture. We realize what is also important for the rest of America. And I think that's a piece that's missing right now. And people, like I said, you need to get to the table and build those coalitions again for the good of the country.
Agriculture is the one policy area that affects every human being on this planet 24/7, from the clothes we put on to the food we put in our mouth to the fuel that we use to get wherever it is we need to be going. So everyone has a stake in this, so everyone should have a voice in this.
And the next question is from Olivia Bridges. You've sent 2 letters to Congress urging more action. Have you received any concrete, satisfactory responses from ag leadership? No. second part of the question was, how did we get to the current situation where farmers are increasingly relying on ag hoc assistance? How does Congress move beyond that? I think that in the past, the ad hoc assistance was major market disruptions. A lot of it, we saw that back in the 90s with the Asian flu, or what, the other types of things that are one-off. But the Congress hasn't dealt with systemic changes in how we farm, systemic changes in how food is processed, systemic changes in who processes that food. These are all issues that need to be addressed. And when they're not addressed, you're going to get in the situation where people in agriculture are so desperate that they're calling for money rather than the changes that we need. This thing, agriculture's changed so much. We used to say it at the corn growers, if you haven't been on a corn farm in 5 years, the last 5 years, you've not been on a corn farm. I'd say that probably is being narrowed up a lot more. But we have systemic changes in agriculture that are not being addressed by policymakers. And instead, what we're doing is there's a lot of folks out there hoping that the check comes up.
Farmers want markets. They don't want handouts. And what isn't happening today is Congress stepping in to make sure that the single most important value-added market of a generation, the U.S. ethanol industry and biodiesel industry, is allowed to continue to grow. They're not stepping up to make sure that the trade markets that farmers in the U.S. worked so hard to create, aren't just gone forever as a consequence of a chaotic and indefensible trade policy. Ad hoc assistance is necessary because of what's happening in D.C. right now, but it's not sustainable, and it's not what farmers want. That's why Congress really needs to step up and create markets for farmers.
Hey, from Cindy Zimmerman, what exactly do you want to see the average farmer to do right now? One, be engaged, know what's going on, look at the website that we're pushing forward. But I tell farmers, and Pam will remember this, when I would give a major presentation before our group, I always put up the phone number, that phone number being 202-224-3121. That's the Capitol Hill switchboard. You can call up and say, I want to talk to my congressman or my senators or whoever. And I would suggest start making the phones ring. And I would suggest that in addition to saying, hey, we got problems out here, tell folks, I want to hear from you. I want to see you out here in my community. Why don't you come out and talk to not just to me, but the couple of dozen people in this community who are farming, who have serious concerns. They'd like to talk to you as well. I think we need to start demanding some accountability from the folks that ask us to vote for them.
Yeah, and I'd add on, Cindy, is that what we want farmers and ranchers to do right now is to use their voice. That's what we've always done, to make sure as a single voice, I can't do anything. But when you join together with other farmers around you and your neighbors, look at what your economic situation is on your farm, in your community, and look at the people that you elect and sorry for the interference, and do those policies of the people that you elect align with what your needs and your need for ag policy is? So do you want the status quo, or do you want a breath of fresh air? Do you want people who are just going to go to Congress to attack each other and to work for the party? Or do you want people who are going to be there to work for the people who elected them? And I think that's the biggest thing to challenge people with right now is get engaged with what's going on in your community and with your elected officials and with the people who are running for office, and talk amongst yourselves and don't be afraid to tell your stories. If you don't do something, if you don't voice something, you're complicit to the way things are.
Okay, we don't have any. Oh, here we are. Jake, do you think stalled farm bill negotiations are an obstacle to broader discussions about reforming the farm economy, particularly if the current approach is to avoid controversial issues? That's it. Yes, they're stalled, and my first farm bill, like Don's, was in 1990. And boy, Congressman Marlene, we went all over eastern Montana all the time. And they were yelling at us a bunch of the time because they wanted to let us know how upset they were about things. But we have to deal with controversial issues. For crying out loud, E15 should not be a controversial issue, but it is. High gasoline prices and low commodity prices, you solve two problems with one action. But it was made controversial. I don't know why. So the second part of the question is, longer the farm bill is kicked down the road, does it limit the opportunity for other agricultural policy issues to emerge during the potential policy window? Yes. And I will let my fellow panelist expand on that, but absolutely.
I'll just say it's not just ag policy issues, but let's just look at the number of days Congress is at work every year. How many legislative days do we have between now and the election? I believe when they finally come back from August recess, there's 8 in the Senate and 10 in the House, or vice versa. How much real policy and how many real policy discussions on systemic issues is going to take place in those 8 to 10 days?
Another question from Cindy Zimmerman, who always asks good questions. But, how do you motivate people who are frustrated by people in Washington who seem to absolutely not care anymore? How can anyone fix what is wrong with DC now? Send different people to DC or just demand accountability. And it is hard to motivate people. And when we did the first letter back in February, we contacted dozens and dozens of people, and a bunch of them just said, no, I don't, I'm really uncomfortable in doing this for a whole host of reasons. And some of it was, I just don't think whatever we do is going to work. And the interaction with farmers and ranchers and the Congress has changed so much over the 4 decades I've been involved in ag policy. And part of it is that people quit being engaged in farm policy and got involved in other issues. And a little bit of shiny ball out here to go ahead and talk about those issues rather than the things that keep businesses on Main Street not only keeping the door open, but thriving. And how can anyone fix what is wrong with DC now? Not anyone can fix what is wrong with DC now. It's up to all of us. All of us. We've got to do it together. And we got to do it without being concerned about partisan issues, but doing this for the good of this country and the good of the people that feed this country and feed the world. Anyone else want to?
People just don't need to accept the status quo. What has passed for political discourse in this country over the last couple of years has been shameful. The politics of personal destruction helps nobody. And you see it in poll after poll where people are tired of the Republican Party, they're tired of the Democratic Party, they're tired of politics. That's because it has sunk to a level where you can call somebody a name and that passes for political discourse. We have to get to a place where we're demanding more of our elected officials, where we are insisting on meaningful discussions about what's going to move this country forward. And the forum that we're hoping to establish, or we are establishing today, is one place where farmers can vent their frustration and can make it known that, look, we are hurting out here, and you people in Washington have got to listen, and you've got to do something. But we can't accept the status quo. We can't accept political discourse as it is today.
I think in answer to your question, Cindy, it is that the reason that the impetus that this group of people who are concerned got together is we see what's happening. It concerns us deeply. We know it can be different. It doesn't have to be this way. So we have to do something. So what does do something mean for Pam Johnson is something different than what it means for Bob or any other John, Dawn, anyone else who's been there, done that, and seen how things can work when they work, and is to give people a voice, to give them hope, to say, you do have a voice. You do have good ideas. Let's get together and hear them and solve the problems.
And I would say that it isn't just the four of us. We were volunteered to be on this panel today, but the 40 plus people that signed the second letter, the 20 some people that signed the first letter, we've had so many conversations with so many people, some of who signed the letters, but a lot who said, I really can't at this point because I'm on a board, or I'm have a job that this would be a problem for. But over and over again, I have received, and I know Pam, Don, and Bob have heard this. I just keep getting comments from people. Hey, thank you for doing this. I can't speak up right now because of where I am, but I appreciate that you've spoken up. There's a lot of people who are very, very concerned who are starting to speak up. You see it in the letters. You see it in the website. More and more people are speaking up, and the more people that speak up, the more people that will speak up. And we need to keep building on that over and over again. And, whether it's going to be 5 people around a table in a coffee shop in the middle of the country, or folks that go to Congress, go to Washington, D.C. to speak to congressional staff, or people who line up to speak at a town hall meeting at the Senior Citizen Center in some small town community in rural America. There's a lot of people out there that want to speak up, and we're just trying to open up the door and allowing them to do so and bring some friends.
I was just going to add that it's the pebble in the pond. It just keeps growing, 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 growing. And folks should also remember that having the conversation with their local officials is also important as well, to have those voices lift up all the way through the system.
Okay, question from Ryan Daly with Ag Navigator. Bob mentioned U.S. falling behind other countries like Brazil in terms of research and ag innovation. Can Bob or the other panelists elaborate on this a bit? How important is this research in staying competitive on the global stage? Is it just a matter of restoring or increasing funding? Turn it to Bob, and then I know, Pam, this is a one that is particularly important to you. So, Bob, take it away.
Look, the most important value-added market for farmers that had a demonstrable impact on farm income over the last generation was indeed the biofuels industry, and how that market provided a value-added opportunity for farmers that they seized upon, and it was a tremendous success. But the question is, what's the next value-added opportunity? What's the next molecule that's going to allow farmers to continue to see value from their assets? And that kind of research has fallen way behind. And we need to get back on the stick. Would more money help? Absolutely, but more focus, more appreciation for science, and for the importance of value-added markets would be helpful as well. But Don, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as you were at USDA, you probably have a unique perspective on this as well.
I'll jump in and then I know Pam wants to get to this as well, but I think I don't have a chart in front of me, but I think you can see the decline over research dollars year over year over year, that it just continues to dwindle. But not only do they need money for these programs, they need trust. And they need something besides chaos on what the issues are and where those dollars can be best utilized. Relationships that they can count on, trust they can build upon, and good, solid information based in science to build these programs. That's very, very, very critical to the conversation.
So this could be a topic in itself about research and the need for public research and public-private partnerships. And I was fortunate enough to help build up a public and private partnership, the Foundation for Food and Ag Research, not only finding more money for research, but building the next generation of researchers and giving them a place to work and do their science without being threatened and having the rug or the infrastructure withdrawn from them. And listening to those fellows about how it changed their life, their trajectory, their projects, unbelievable. Also had a little bit of experience in getting congressional funding, working bipartisan to map the corn genome and what that meant to open up that science, not just in corn, but then in further down the line in other crops. That does not happen without a public investment in research and partnering with private research. It takes both.
So thank you so much for being part of this discussion today. We are, again, we're not trying to replace trade associations. We're not attempting to speak for agriculture entirely. But what we want to do is keep facilitating more voices coming into the public sphere so that policymakers can hear from folks that are most affected by farm and agricultural policy. And we hope that our voices will be magnified and that those magnified voices will be heard. So with that, thank you very much.